Just last week, I was in a conversation with an Orientalist scholar, non-Muslim Islamic studies scholar. And their biggest thing, I don't know if you saw this documentary, I think it was on the Discovery Channel, if I'm not mistaken, on the Quran. And they talked about how the Quran is not actually preserved, and it's all these different parchments, and they found this other version of it, the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? And it's missing some surahs and all of this kind of stuff. Is the Quran really what it was then? Or is it just a myth that the Quran we have now is the same as then? Let me tell you something about the Western textual criticism of the Quran. These people are incredibly smart at pulling off scams. And they sell a scam really well. And if you don't know the scam, you'll say, oh my God, makes sense. He's got a PhD, he must be telling the truth. It's on TV, how can that be wrong? Right? That's our standard at this point, the level of intellectual depth the Ummah has, right? I saw this documentary and it shook my iman. Seriously, it should have made you laugh. It should have made you laugh. When somebody tries to spit at the sun, it comes back on their own face. That's what they did. They spit on their own face. Let me tell you something about this. In the West, I'll start very logically, because this is again a very important concept for all of us to have that gives us confidence in deen. When you want to preserve a document, there are two ways. Written archive and oral tradition. There are only two ways of preserving a document historically. What are they again? Written archive or oral tradition. Written archive means you write it down. Oral tradition means you memorize it and make somebody else memorize it and make somebody else memorize it, and that's how it's passed down. Okay. According to Western standards and logical standards, which of these is a safer, do you know? Written archive. Written archive is safer. Why is it safer? Even though both have criticisms. If I start at that corner, I say to one brother, brother, I'm going to whisper something in your ear. I want you to whisper it to the next person. I whisper in his ear, Ahmed punched Kareem. Okay? Ahmed punched Kareem in the stomach. That's all I told him. Ahmed punched Kareem in the stomach. He whispers it to the next brother, then the next brother, then the next brother whispers it to the next, and the next. By the time we get over there, Ahmed gutted Kareem's stomach out, burnt his house down, and then blew up the neighborhood. Okay? Every person adds 1%. And by the time you go through 500 people, how much has been added? 500%. This is an error of oral communication. It's a problem of oral communication. Okay? Even if you change one word, and the next changes just one word, those one words can add up. They can add up. So the argument in Western criticism is an oral tradition goes through lots of changes. Logical, very logical. Okay, let's keep that in the back of your mind. Now come to written tradition. They didn't have Xerox back then. They didn't have scanners back then either. So if you have a book, and you wrote it out, the only way to duplicate it is what? Write another one. If you are, and is it handwritten or machine written? Handwritten. And in handwritten archives, is it possible you made a mistake? It's possible. And then this book has one mistake, and then this book with one mistake went, and it got duplicated. Is it possible another mistake will happen? It's possible, right? These are possibilities, and these guys love talking about possibilities, let me tell you. Right? So now they say, okay, and by the way, in the West, when they talk about historical documents, do they pride themselves over oral traditions or written traditions in the West? Written traditions. So their understanding of something properly documented has to be what? Written. So they come to the Quran with the understanding that the only way the Quran was preserved is by what? Writing. By writing. Now, if we go by their, let's agree with their argument. In the beginning, let's agree with their argument, okay? If we go by their argument, if the Quran was memorized, and then person A helped person B memorize, but person B memorized it a little bit differently, and then they went and taught person C, and they memorized also a little bit differently, over time, would you have less variation, or would you have more variation? You would have more variation. And if the Quran is written down, and then it goes to another town, another copy, is it possible variations will also increase? This is a historical fact. If you're going to, especially not even stay in the same town, they're not even on the same continent. And there's no one-way flights back then either. So you're months and months and months apart. And you can't even make a phone call and say, no, you've got the wrong version. If you want to get the information to them, you've got the wrong version, you're going to be traveling for 6 months. And in those 6 months, it may have spread even more. In other words, if there is one variation, it can become 10,000 variations without the ability to control the information. You understand? And how long has this spreading of information been going on? 1400 years plus. In other words, by going purely by Western standards, we should have so many versions of the Quran, they should be in the millions. No two people can probably have the same Quran if we go by their standards. Now come to our time. You take a kid who memorized Quran in Jiang province, China. And then you take a kid who memorized Quran in Somalia. And you take a kid who memorized Quran at IQA. And they're hanging out together one day. And one is reciting Baqarah. And one speaks Chinese, one speaks Somali, right? One speaks English. They can't talk to each other, but one's reciting Baqarah. Can the other one correct him? They can. The fact that the Quran was primarily preserved by making it easy to remember. There is no document in human history that was predominantly protected by memorization. Memorization is a way to create variation, but in the Quran's case, memorization became a means to create unity and the lack of variation. What is usually associated with too much variation now became no variation at all, and their only answer to that is there must be some conspiracy by which they stopped all these other versions from coming out. Can you help me? Has there been any other conspiracy where there's no leaks? Millions of people from different civilizations memorizing the same exact thing. And Allah saying miraculously, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ. We no doubt made the Qur'an easy for remembrance, and for dhikr includes memorization. Allah made it miraculously easy for memorization. Tell me any other document that has this kind of preservation. And if they say, we don't know if the Qur'an's preservation is intact, let's put it to the test. Let's make a giant vault, put all the copies of Qur'an in there, get rid of them. How long before in Richardson we come up with a new copy of Qur'an? Through our hufad, in this zip code. We don't even have to go to the next zip code. You can cut off our internet access and phone lines too. And how long before they come up with another Bible? Think about it. Even another copy of the United States Constitution. Let's just do that. That's not even thousands of years old. That's a couple of hundred years old. Let's just take it away and let's see if they can come up with it. Word for word. Let's see how long that takes them and how long it takes us to come with Quran again. Allah says He preserved it. Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra. He preserved it in a way, even if you try to corrupt it. There were attempts to make surah, they publish copies of Quran, it's called Furqan, I think it's called, that's missing some surahs. They say it's the politically incorrect surahs are taken out. And the Muslims are so, how dare they? Don't you have to worry, it's okay. What are they going to do? What they couldn't do for the last 1400 years, when Allah said He protected His word, you think these jokers are going to sell 2 books at Amazon.com and compete with Quran? Are you kidding me? There's nothing to worry about. Because we're not responsible for guarding this book. Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun. It is only we who are taking responsibility of guarding this book. This is Allah's responsibility. And He made it in a way that the only way to get rid of Quran is to wipe out the entire population of Muslims from the face of the earth simultaneously. That's the only way. Get rid of 1/5, 1/4 of the world's population. That's the only way left to get rid of Quran. In other words, over time, documents become less viable, less valid, and this is the only text that only becomes more valid. You know the biblical studies? In biblical studies, did you know that in most Bible scholars that are doing PhDs from universities here, Bible scholars, they no longer believe that the Bible is historically accurate. They don't believe it. Read the talks by Professor Gerald Dirks or listen to his interview on Brother Eddie's show, thedeenshow.com. Listen to it. He's got a master's degree in divinity. This is a gift of Allah to the messenger. You couldn't get rid of this message if you tried. Not if you tried. You know, he used to be so worried. Am I going to forget the ayat? He used to be so worried. He used to rush his tongue. لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به. And Allah told him, إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه. We've taken it upon ourselves to gather it and to have it communicated, have it recited. Look how Allah took that responsibility away from the messenger. Took it off his shoulders. الذي أنقض ظهرك. He took it off his shoulders. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. These are from the gifts Allah Azza wa Jal has given him. The last point I will make before you is the following. After we list all these things that come under Kawthar, and Allah has given those to him, how is he supposed to thank Allah? You know, you can only thank. The thanks, the reaction should be in accordance with the action. How do you take these infinite gifts and how can you ever respond? I don't even know where to begin. You know when somebody does a huge favor to you, you say, I don't even know what to say. You're at a loss. I don't even know what I can do for you. I can never repay you. Right? When we appreciate what Allah has given His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the thing that comes to mind is how is he to repay this? What can Allah expect from him now? He can't come up with anything, so Allah gives it to him. Fasalli. Pray. Make salah. The first act of gratitude to Allah is salah. The first act of gratitude. He didn't say washkur. You know, I've given you a lot, so thank me. Washkur rabbak? No. Praise your master? No. Salli li rabbik. Pray to your master and then sacrifice. Salli. And by the way, this is the act of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Prayer and sacrifice is the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Allah Azza wa Jal tells and says about him, Shakiran li an'umihi. He was grateful to the favors Allah had given him. And how did he show that gratitude? Prayer and sacrifice. Prayer and sacrifice. And this is what the Messenger is told. This is to give us a new appreciation, inshaAllah ta'ala, of these cardiovascular exercises we do 5 times a day. What they actually mean to Allah. What their value is to Allah. On the one hand, He put Al-Kawthar. On the other hand, He put Salah. SubhanAllah. What a gift this Salah is to the Ummah. What a gift this is. What a huge means by which we can make our case before the Day of Judgment. The first question to be asked is Salah, and there's a reason. There's a reason for that. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us an appreciation of His Word. May Allah Azza wa Jal remove from us an incorrect understanding of His Word. And not only should we beg Him to have a correct understanding of it, but in addition that we are able to live by it. And that the study of Qur'an, the memorization of it, the proper recitation of it, the acting upon it, all of this is a case in our favor on the Day of Judgment and not a case against us. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim wa nafa'ni wa iyyakum bil ayati wa dhikr al-Hakim. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.